Okay, call the meeting to order for the Whately Board of Assessors on February 25th at 4 p.m. February 25th, 2025. With a few items on the agenda here tonight, and we've also got several people from RRG here to explain some things of what they've done, what they did to our data and how it's presented here. So we've been asking for, I guess, several months to try to understand some of the data, why changes have been made, and trying to decide, not only understand, but whether this is acceptable to the board and this is the way we should be proceeding with our data. We were questioning how to come up with building values and land values for this last go around for fiscal 25 taxes, and also for the tax classification hearing, where all that data was used to come up with increases in growth, and also determining the tax rate, which tax rate did go down, but the assessed value of most properties did go up. So your change in your tax bill may not be there. So it could have went either way, but we're trying to understand that process. Yes, we've asked several times for explanation, and it's come down to, I guess, I'd say the principals at RRG to explain that to us in detail, where we can understand and try to accept what they've done. So I think the board is all, as far as if I hear, is in agreement that we need an explanation of what's been done. And
yes.
And I guess I know I've talked with Mike on it some, and Jenny, I think you're on board as well.
Yes.
That we need explanations here of what's been done. So, and we do have a resident here from, I guess I'd say, Pine Plains Estates. It's also interested
Number 6
in how their tax bill was tax values were arrived at for fiscal year 25. So. Okay. Guess we'll proceed. If the board has anything else, comments, okay. Turn it over to RRG and tell us what information you presented and how we should view it, and how this came about, I guess.
So can you see this well enough, or should I try to shoot it on that wall there?
Can you enlarge that?
That's as big as
large they can get it.
Where I'm sitting this way.
You know what? We can just.
Is this the same table that you gave us
Yep.
a month or so ago?
Okay, we got that.
It's the sales.
You've got that right. That's the first. Here's right here.
What was this one?
That might be the same thing.
No, so that one starts with North Street, kind of. Well, okay, it does.
Same thing. Yeah, same thing. So you got an extra copy. So the what we're looking at, starting with North Street up top.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So we've got 2 copies. I'll go on this.
A little crooked, so that's all I'm saying. But
Not really.
maybe I don't know. I don't think it's possible. You like one light off?
Yeah. There you go.
I mean, is it possible for me to look at a paper copy as long as I give it back to you?
I'm sure. I would think. I don't see why not.
This one, I just tried to.
Yeah.
My current data. Yeah. Most of it's on there. Yeah, okay, go ahead. I'll let you explain what you're doing here.
Yeah, so these are the sales that were used to,
Okay.
Yeah,
for analysis of fiscal 25. Yeah, like, so.
trash out of the car, out of the snack box,
Uh,
compost.
Um, so this is the whole grouping of sales. So we had to use 2 years worth based
Okay.
on Department of Revenue standards. So you get a sample size of 18 sales. So the first thing we look at, well, the first thing we do is look at all the deeds and all the transfers in the entire town for 2 years.
Okay.
worth. We have to make sure and that they were arm's length transactions.
Yes, correct. So that means a quick claim deed isn't considered in this transaction. Quick
No,
claim.
it is.
It
Well,
is.
yeah, Massachusetts is the
Okay.
only state in the country that actually uses quick claim.
Yes.
But we want to make sure that it was marketed.
Okay,
It's not a foreclosure, it's not a
Okay.
short sale.
because it's generally
It's
amongst,
not to family,
I was gonna say, it's generally a family.
right? There's
Okay.
no estates, any of those types of
Okay.
things.
I was wrong on that, yeah.
So all of those are proofed out and coded out before
Okay,
we start doing analysis.
Okay, well, the first one on your list is called, it's to family, it's a family transfer.
It was a marketed, all of these were marketed
But I know the family, and I looked at the data, and it is from mother to daughter or to son. It's different names, so you wouldn't recognize it by the name on the deed, but it is first one.
he did answer the question. It was a market sale,
Okay,
It was a market sale, it was an arm's length sale. even though
Okay.
it's amongst family.
It's
That's what you're
family,
saying.
okay,
As long as it was marketed to the open market.
So it's in MLS.
Yep.
So that would answer that question.
okay,
So it may have been discounted, because as you can see, what we look at first is what we call the assessment to sale ratio. So that is your this column here, previous value. So the previous assessment would be fiscal 24 assessment. And you divide it by the sale price, and you get a ratio of what is, where it is, and where it lies in market.
good.
So we're overvalued property.
Where is the fiscal 24? Well, it says values in there.
Column K, previous value.
Previous value, there it is, yep.
But that's the total,
That's
the total,
total value.
you're looking at total value, okay.
That's total, I can change the heading if you want.
Total assessed value,
Yep, that's the total assessed value
Yep.
from fiscal 20.
and the sale price went below assessed value, which is unusual. Okay.
Sort of, okay, previous value is.
That may have
we
been for the
have
family members.
Three sales that happened that way. Let's see.
Yep.
So as a whole, what we look at is what is our median assessment to sale ratio on all the sales. So you can see Massachusetts standards say 100% of market value, meaning that this ratio should be 1.00. It's 0.88. That means we're 12% below
But based on those sales.
based on these sales. Correct.
Gotcha.
So you then stratify these in a bunch of different ways. So I need to look at them by the prime site based on zoning, this is one acre or less. And then I look at the median ratio that way. I look at all the sales that are over prime, so over 1 acre. What these are going to tell me as I go through are what areas in tables or in town are deficient. So ideally, if all our data looks good and everything, once we adjust them, all these ratios should be relatively close, along with what we call a coefficient of dispersion.
But how did you come up from, I understand what you did the previous in the current totals, but how did you break it down into land value and building value?
Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I could, how many sales is that? About
18.
18. Is
Yep.
that enough credible data?
So I also did look at the future year sales.
Okay,
To
okay.
make sure that everything was trending in the way that I needed to look at
Okay.
it. But for the purpose of what gets submitted to the state, I can't include those. So I always try to look ahead to make sure that things are always trending in the same pattern. So that we're not over or under adjusting certain
Or,
areas.
18 credible.
Well, I think you can go, whether is it 6 or 9 months on either side? The
Right.
state allows you of that
to,
2-year
to
period.
get that.
Yeah.
Data.
24 months though?
No, it's it's plus
Right.
6 months,
You
so
could have
if
done
you,
it plus or minus 6
yeah,
months.
if you added another 6 months on either side, how many more would you have?
Well, if I did that, I would have had to take 6 months off the 22 sales. So
No,
it's-
you could add the 20, you could,
No,
I think what I remember reading is 2 years plus 6 months on either side of the 2 years you could add.
no, you
Alright.
can either use 6 months into the past and
Yeah.
6 months into the future with your current year, or 2 years prior.
That's the state.
Okay,
That's the state.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay,
Okay. And again, not
whatever, but okay.
not, and not harping on this. What if you only had 3 sales? What do you do? It's a
Be
problem.
very conservative.
So the amount of sales, be they a lot or less,
Right.
is also going to play into your final determination. Okay.
The more sales we have, the better.
Yeah,
Right.
of course, it's
Yeah.
more credible. Yeah.
As anything anymore, more data points are better.
Yes. Okay. Very good.
And so I know this came up last time we were discussed this. So I did not change any economic neighborhoods in this town. What you're seeing here is what's being used and what's being added. So I know you discussed there's a neighborhood, the
Pine Plains.
Pine Plains.
Okay.
I looked into what we call the landlines, to see what are the specific codes, as you can see in the neighborhood EWC.
Yeah.
Those are
There's
all.
not a single parcel in town labeled Pine Plains. They're only using, historically, all you've been using is these 3.
Well,
So
no,
whether they used to be, they were changed prior to us coming. That's all you got.
I don't know what you're looking at. I don't have the.
No, there is.
I'll show you that table after.
Yeah, there is a category
There is
under
some,
WW subtitled Pine Plains on the property.
Pine
records.
Plains.
But
Yeah.
I think what I heard you
it's
say,
just a label.
it's a label.
It's just a label.
Okay, so if I heard you right,
yeah, but
those were the ones that are coded, that have been used, and no changes in
As far as the coding, no,
no changes in
no
okay.
changes to the coding. I
Okay.
didn't remove Pine Plains. I didn't do any of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I looked at what we had available.
Okay.
So what you can see right off the bat between EW and WW, all right, the pre-assessment WW was almost where it should be. It's at 92.5%, where and BC was at 96.4%.
The village center.
EW is at 87%, which is lower than our overall median. And as you go through, you'll see that most of them are in the 80s. So what does this tell me? Statistically, this one's too low. This one's possibly too high. So because as we go through, you'll see, specifically scroll down just to style. So Cape's 86% colonials were valued on the higher end, already on a pre-assessment ratio above 100%. Branches are 88%. Look at the creations. So quality of the homes. We're at 100%, 86%, 87%.
And again, I'm sorry, the quality of homes. So, of course,
So the grade
Grade that we
grade is
gave.
quality, right? So this should not change throughout time. Your grades is a measurable data point.
okay.
It's the overall workmanship, the design, the materials used in the home.
And that's in the system. That's already in our system.
Right. So those typically would not change unless somebody completely changes the structure.
Okay.
Sure.
May I ask a question now?
Absolutely. If you have a question, sure.
So how is the design, the materials and the workmanship determined? How is the workmanship determined? Materials, how is that determined?
Through inspection, so we have guidelines that we would look at overall in looking at what the gradations are. So obviously we've come into the town just mid-year last year, so
Mhm.
your gradations were there prior to us.
So you're saying originally they would have been determined based on design, materials and workmanship?
Yes.
And that's when I look at the GIS or the Patriot card.
The Patriot card.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
So,
Could
Is-
they be
is-
subjective?
Well, of course, everything is a bit slightly subjective. Ideally, when you look at an entire town, you want the same people or person or persons to do an entire town. So typically when we come into a town, we're seeing that over time, they've subcontracted with probably a dozen different entities that have come in to do their data collection. So you've got now a dozen different type of views of whose
mhm,
house is called what and gradation. So, we have a manual, we go through our organization every year. I go through a training, Steve, Dave were just at it, where I have visual pictures of what we consider the different grades are. We have descriptions, which I've taken straight from appraisal standards, what you get from the appraiser or that kind of spell out the type of materials, what you're looking for in the design. If it's a one-of-a-kind home, the highest grade, it's completely custom. It's not stock materials you'd find off Home Depot's floor. It's just a unique, completely unique custom home versus your average home, which you'll have like a builder build an entire development of just basic quality that meet minimum building codes. So if it just meets your minimum build,
Sure.
building codes, then that would be your average quality home. And then
So
what you go,
how do you find out as a consumer, as a
Mhm.
citizen, what are minimum building codes?
you can Google them and find them online. Certainly you could talk to your building instructor, inspector.
The
You know,
RRG supply
we-
that information.
Yeah, we have little descriptions of what we consider all the different gradations to be. Certainly give it to you.
You have to go on the basis that when they were graded 10 years ago or whatever.
Right,
That there
so
was some sort of standards that they used.
hopefully,
Okay, but we don't really know if there was. Okay, and the only way that it could be re-standardized if it's some rubric or something that you use.
right, I mean, ideally, and one of my goals, would be this, this year and next year, probably canvass the entire town to make sure we have uniformity throughout the town. So that there's not fluctuations, we can look at the whole street, and if you see the whole street was built in 1950, you got 30 houses on the street, and a dozen of them are ranches built in 1950 and have 4 different grades. Well, that's a red flag. Why are there 4 different grades of houses that are practically identical?
So is there much difference between like when something's graded B plus or B or B minus? Because I look at the GIS cards in Pine Plains,
Yeah.
okay? And I see quite a spread, a fair spread, even when the same builder built the house.
Right.
And so I just want to understand where my bottom line comes from, and I've
Sure.
struggled with it for a long time, and more so this
Yeah,
year.
yeah, so, that's a good point, if it's the same builders building the whole development again, and yes, he could be building nicer homes, which, happens. You're looking at what did they buy into any upgrades? You know, so if B is your standard good, minus is slightly below, plus is slightly better. Were there any differences in style? Were there roof cutouts versus just your basic gable? Are there
High
stone sidings, high cathedral ceilings? Were there custom cabinets built in? Or, you know, any custom entertainment
You're
centers?
describing houses that have a lower rating than mine.
Yeah, so those are all the kind of. So Fred, when,
Let me explain. I've been on this board for 15 years, and I've been in every house in town at least once. And what we've done is try to be consistent when we look at the grade and quality of houses. And I've been doing it 15 years, so I have experience in what is a B, B plus, A minus grade. And our prior assessor was here, assistant assessor, that before Stephen was here for 31 years. So she knew what the grades were. And it's not like every year or we hired somebody to come out and look at grades and go into houses and assess what it is. Some towns do that. They hire somebody to do that every year. We do not do that. We've had consistency for 31
Yeah,
years.
I wanna jump on that as well, because David, I think when you were saying you could have a dozen towns, dozen different views of something, you're talking about some other towns you've worked with and not necessarily Whately.
I'm just speaking in generalities.
Yeah.
And
Then Fred's
the
being specific.
other thing is, as an example, Pine Plains, when houses were being built, we did go inside, look at them, look at the plans, and determine the quality based on everything David was saying, the construction, the grade, all that. We knew what your house was compared to others in the neighborhood. We just didn't go in blindly and look at your house and say, okay, well, I guess this is a B. No, we made some determination that, okay, we're gonna call yours a B, then we gotta look at what are your neighbors doing? What are your neighbors' houses is coded as? And we were aware of that. And we do have a table, and Stephen can show you, print out a whole table of all the Pine Plains estates to show you the grade of all your neighbors, all your houses. We look at that. We were worried. We were concerned that some people were higher grade than others. Why? Well, we kind of remember the ones we were in, why they were higher grade. And we felt there was a justification for that. Some of the reasons, yes, it's kind of subjective. What's the quality of it? What's the construction grade? Even though it's the same builder, there's things that we were aware of that supported why we had a certain grade for a house. We rarely change the grade. I guess if we come into your house after we've been there, we'll look at the grade, but we rarely change the grade because we don't want to get into that every time we look at a house to change grades.
And that grade does have a chart or something that shows the effect on that grade. Again, it's not something you just come up with. There's actually data you
Right.
can look at and say, yeah,
Right.
here's the data, and here's why I've come up with this grade. Although I think David is somewhat alluding to you may have some inconsistencies.
So I haven't looked at everything, but it's always good to take, put another set of eyes on.
Sure.
And you've got to go inside the house really to determine the grade, quality of construction. Just driving by, looking at building permits. That's not very accurate. I'd say half the time building permits are accurate. The other half they're not. And we found that they're not accurate. Either by the dimensions, the description of what's being built is not accurate on a building permit. And if you're gonna hire somebody, like some towns do, to go out and look at building permits and decide the grade or quality, you're missing the whole point of what you should be looking at.
It's just not credible.
It's not credible. It's not credible to look at some things like that.
Because of the inconsistencies. Yeah.
And if we look at determining the grade, yeah, some of it is subjective And we come back here and we put it in a computer and say, okay, this grade, what is this house assessed at? What is the value? And if it comes up with a number, we kind of say, is that reasonable for this area? Most of the time we say yes. If it isn't, we say, we look at what conditions did we miss? Did we miss something? Or did we overvalue something? And should we lower the value, say, of the kitchen, grade of the kitchen? Because we came up with a value that was, let's just say 100,000 more than all your neighbors. Well, we do that. We're aware of that because we realize there can't be that much difference in a neighborhood. The same quality, same style, same year houses were built. Your area is kind of unique because you're all within what, maybe 10 years old of the
Sure.
oldest house.
Yeah.
And you're all, what I want to say, maybe above average quality of houses or grades or style or square footage. You're higher than most other areas in town. So,
Due to its newness, of course.
and the newness of also the construction.
Because there were requirements on
Right,
house design,
That may not.
roof styles and so forth.
right. And we realize a house built in 2024 has to have certain minimum design standards because the state changes building codes. And we compare that to a house built in 1950, we realize you both could be the same grade, B, and both of them, because the 50s house has stuff higher quality for that age of house. So
Perhaps due to a renovation.
it could be for renovations or whatever, or we get into some of that with the older houses, antique houses. How do you determine the quality of an antique house? I mean, you got to go by what was the standard building code back in 1860 when that house was built. And is it minimum grade in the house, or is it higher than that? So
It's not simple, I guess. Is what you're
no,
saying.
it's not.
Not a
It's not.
simple
And
No, it's not.
and
Yeah.
and
I
I
don't
think
want to go down too much of a rabbit hole on
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
You know, you have an agenda.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
So in the goal of this, when we're adjusting values, is that you don't just blanket adjust the town. So if I were just to take these 18 sales and say, all right, we're 12% low, and sure, I can go in the system and put in a factor that'll just take everything up 12%. Well, what's that going to do to values as a whole? Are they going to be equitable? No. So you're going to have half the town overvalued, half the town undervalued, all kinds of inconsistencies. So when we're doing it, it's very methodical of adjusting a little bit in different areas. So we have to adjust our depreciation tables to make sure they're current up to the most current year. I look at the styles and adjust those up a little bit. And the goal is to get this ASR approximate in all the categories, so that this number here is what we call a COD. So that's a coefficient of dispersion. So the smaller the number, the tighter the overall grouping of values and ratios. So you can see that on the top selection, we were at 11.3%, which as a whole isn't bad. But after I adjusted the tables, now we're at 5.76. So almost cut in half by balancing and adjusting the tables here. And that's the goal throughout all the different stratifications of data that we look at. We want to make sure that our ASRs are approximate and that our CODs are approximate. You're always going to have an outlier. It just happens. There's a property that somebody like this one. You got a little branch of 1,150 square feet that someone paid $420,000 for. Started at only 57% assessed value, went up to 70. So could you adjust that one, that single one up more? Sure, but then
We're
You
used-
don't really want to manipulate your data that on a singular level, because then it screws up all your analyses, statistics. So you're better off just having them. So you can see as I go down the list that we have approximate ASRs amongst all the groups with low CODs. So that's really the goal in what I looked at and did, adjusted all those different things. And when it came down to it, I generally will do, so we did have one land sale. That's
But still, I guess I haven't heard how you determine the
get into it.
Yeah, he's getting to
the
the land, he's
land
getting
and
to the
building
land.
values.
Yeah,
Okay,
reduction in land.
So the highlighted yellow ones are our lands. So in 22, you have one on Union Road. That's in, let's see,
That's
That
JDR's property.
yeah, so that sold overall market. See, but that was a private sale.
And it's right on top of the railroad tracks.
and
Yeah,
and it's a
3 feet.
commercial, isn't it
That one was
commercial?
coded out, so that's a private sale.
It's a commercial area too, I think. Bridget Road is commercial. 130 code.
I had three land sales that occurred.
Six Eastwood.
6 Eastwood.
That's the little property, like, and Rebecca.
Oh, gotcha, it's a little private, yeah. That was quick claim.
What's that?
That was quick claim.
So that sold for 120. We had it valued at 128. And
Yeah.
based on adjustments, we brought it up to 14, which brought it in 5%. Now, that one I believe was in switch.
The land use code was not 101 though.
Was in it. But again, so if you look at the neighborhoods ended up getting adjusted down at WW.
The land values.
Yes, because we were already at such a high ASR to begin with. So after adjusting the buildings and everything else, they were coming in too high. So in order to balance them, that economic neighborhood had to come down a little to achieve the right ASR overall for
Why didn't you adjust the building values instead of that?
they both went up.
Huh?
So they both got adjusted.
Why? But
Because when I adjusted the building values, their overall assessment was too high. So
Okay,
we
but-
had to bring WW down in order to balance them out to get in the same range as every.
go back again. What was your rationale for it? Lowering the land values here. You said you had one sale and that's what you used.
No, I have this group of sales right here,
The group you're looking at.
this group. When I adjusted the buildings to make all the other categories fit, the land was coming in too high in this neighborhood that was giving their overall ratio too high. So the WW neighborhood had to come down in order to make it work for the whole town.
Okay, but I guess we've never had that big a range in land values from the west versus the east, you're talking 20,000 and some 16, you're talking $20,000 difference in land values.
Well, you're also not looking at the acreage. So
Well,
one
Yeah,
acre,
that's true.
well, some of them,
1.27 here is 117.
okay,
The
but-
closest one here is 96.
So it's not apples to apples, is what he's saying.
Yeah,
no,
so I
but
mean,
you're $20,000 difference, almost $20,000 difference. And I can't see where the land values have changed that much in town from one area to another. I mean, you don't have enough sales in each area to say that.
that's why if you don't have the land sales, you have to use the single family sales in order to adjust your
It's an interesting concept because there's a general rule of thumb.
It's considered a land residual.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a,
You're extracting the land
Right.
values from
Right.
the improved properties you come up with.
it's an appraisal concept,
Yes.
not something that I as a realtor would look at.
Okay,
No,
I need
Not at
to,
all.
Go ahead.
I think we need to try and simplify our language a little bit because I understand the English words, but I don't understand the concept of a phrase, the land values are coming in too high. And the whole point here, David, is it's not, you have a system that you use and you've been using it, you've made your career off of it, and that's fine. We're not trying to challenge it, but we are trying to understand it because
Sure.
we're trying, the question is, are we going to transfer to your system?
Well, this is the Department of Revenue's methodology for deriving at your values. So in the absence of actual land sales, you have to use improved properties and you extract the land value through your statistics. So you adjust your land values based on what your overall statistics are telling you.
Okay, you're being very specific to the land piece right now, but I'm talking generally. Your
Yeah.
whole analysis, which has raised a lot of questions for Fred, who's been doing this possibly a different way for a long time.
Well, I don't know what to tell you about what you did in the past. I know you had Mayflower do your values for quite a bit. I don't know, was that just on your certification years or was that every year?
Every year.
So he would have used the same methodology because I know Dwayne very well.
Yeah, but we've never
And
had.
this is the standard methodology approved by the Department of Revenue. There
But
really isn't another way to do it.
we've never had land values decrease in any year that I've been involved. They either stayed the same or they went up, regardless of what area of town you're in. And the area, of course, that had the highest values was East Whately, the Pine Plains Estates, because that was all fairly new and unique area. And lots were selling for more than lots anywhere else in town.
Well,
Fred, that's fine when you've got lots that are selling, but you don't have lots that are selling. So we have
Right.
to use a land residual approach. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to come and compare our sales to the assessment from the prior year. And we're going to bring the sales up to that then, but by adjusting the building. And when we do that, what then has to be left is the land that has to be adjusted and adjusted, and that's the land residual.
Okay, but you're reducing land values
because
to
if we
less
didn't,
than what people actually paid for
But
them.
if you didn't,
that doesn't really, we don't have any land sales, so you can't
I
say.
know. Well,
I mean, they
Other
could have been
than-
back at some day, but that's the market. The market goes up and down.
Well, for
And
the
you
last
can't
10
say
years.
land sales don't go down because
they do.
they do.
That's right. They do.
I've worked in almost 40 towns, several in this area, and I've been adjusting land values downward the last 5 years. Partly because there's a scarcity in materials.
Right.
The new construction codes are extremely prohibitive. Cost a lot more to build to those. So people aren't building new construction as much. They want to buy already improved properties and then improve them more to their standard.
Okay, but your analysis looks at the current assessed value. All right, this column, that's what you start with to get your statistics to come up to break down. Current value, how do we know that that's the right numbers to use for the assessed value?
So that's the value we used last year, that's the starting point?
You always start with the prior assessed value, which is that column K, where it says previous value.
Which is,
This number
Right
here.
there.
okay, that's previous
So
value.
these are your ratios from the previous value and our overall ratio. Compared to every other category, the
Okay.
WW neighborhood was being valued more than every other category.
So you're being
Okay,
equitable.
okay, but how did,
Correct.
okay, I understand, okay, this column is the sale, that was the previous assessed
assessment.
value. How did you come up with this value?
That's through the adjustments of all the tables.
Wait a minute, you have to come up with that value first, and then you adjusted
No.
these two.
No,
Didn't
no.
you?
No, that you adjust, I'm adjusting all the tables within the database itself. So the styles, we have to adjust for depreciation. I look at all of these stratifications, every which way, and whatever is a table in the system. And they have to be adjusted in order to be equitable throughout all the stratifications and get equitable assessments throughout the town.
If you didn't adjust them, what would that mean to those people?
They would have been over assessed.
They would have been oversets and overtaxed. Right, gotcha. Okay, and again, Fred, these are
I
generally
guess I
accepted
still
appraisal
don't understand
guidelines.
how, go up to the two. How did you come up with this value? This is what we had in our records in fiscal 24, right?
Right.
580. Okay, now you're saying that the value is 647.
Right.
Explain to me again, maybe I missed it. How did you
So
come
it's
up
sold
with
for
this?
670.
Right, 670, okay,
So we can't leave it flat because it's under assessed.
right,
So we
Okay.
have to adjust the tables in order, we have to look at all the features of all this property. So we have
Right.
to look at antique, we look
Right.
at the year built, we look at the grade, the conditions.
yeah, okay.
All of those things need to get adjusted within the tables in order to meet the level of assessment that's approved
And
by the
what,
state standards.
and what's that level assessment, what is that number, 9?
So now we're at almost 97% on this particular property.
And that compares this number to that number.
Yes.
Right. Okay, and how did you, when you looked at the grade and condition and all that, how did you decide which ones to adjust? To come up with a value here?
Well, conditions generally, unless through the MLS review, the place is completely remodeled without permit. Most of the time, these things will not change as far as the letter condition.
Yeah, that's what the assessors, what our
But
board did.
In the
Yes.
tables, we'll look at also the statistics on the different grades and whether there's modifiers. So C is average, which should be basically a 1.
Okay.
So, for instance, and I'm just throwing out random numbers. So say a ranch is $150 per square foot. And then, it's 1148 square feet. The grade condition would be basically the modifier is 1 for a C, and let's say a C plus is 1.05. So there's a 5% increase for above average, and so forth. So whatever those modifiers are. So again, you can see these B minuses were coming in almost at 100% prior to making any table changes. Yet the B grade was at 87% prior to the table change. So I generally believe the grades to kind of last, because I want to factor in my depreciation tables based on current year. I will look at the styles and then, look at the land and then look at the grades. And then it's a balancing act of adjusting each of them, until I get numbers that work
For, for everybody.
for everybody.
And you said, how many land sales were they? I got 3 land sales in town. I don't know.
Over the last, yeah, so,
What's
when I pulled the report, it's not, I guess, didn't pull them right. Here's my. So I don't have.
I just did it. Let's see, I mean, so, on land only.
Yeah, so the 24 ones
May not show up.
wouldn't have showed up.
That makes sense.
23 one.
Yeah.
I think I did, that was what I did.
Okay, that makes sense. The 24 didn't show up.
Yeah, that'll be this coming.
Gotcha.
So you're showing that land values are increasing.
Well, it's my general. We're talking appraised value,
So-
assessed value versus market value. Those are 2 different things.
So on these too, you know, if it's, which wouldn't come in, is if it's sold as land and they've already put a house on it
Right.
prior to us doing value adjustments,
Gotcha.
then it's not looked at as the
Land.
overall, the land
Just land only.
sale.
Gotcha.
That being said,
But you answered my question. Those 2024 land sales are going to show up next.
yeah,
Next
so
time.
for instance, there's a sale that we call a P, so
P meaning.
that was new construction, so that was a change in.
Oh, gotcha.
So 86 Masterson sold for.
You should have it right there.
180.
You got it right there, yeah.
And land sale, how many?
And that was about 3 acres up there, I believe.
But does
Yeah, we
your
have-
land sales, doesn't take into account the view tax though, does it?
No, my report I did is just a CMA.
No, well,
Compared to
yours,
market
the none of these would have affected by the view, but that one on
Mm.
Masterson
Mm.
or the one at Haydenville would have been affected by the view. There's
Again,
view tax on that one.
I want to say you're talking assessed versus market.
Yeah,
Which
Yeah, but if
there's
you're
where the
comparing-
view tax is going to come in under the assessed value. It's going
Right.
to come in under market value because they paid more anyways.
Right,
for
but
that property.
if you're looking at changing that column for the view, I mean,
Did I say that right?
yeah, so anything market is current.
Yes.
Assessed values are retrospective
Yes.
values that are 18 months, basically 18
Yes.
months old.
Yes.
I still have the problem of
So,
treating Pine Plain, we've historically treated Pine Plains Estates as different than the rest of the town, or even different than
So-
East Whately.
with
And
the data that was given to me when I got here,
It-
there is nobody using
There's no Pine
Pine
Plains
Plains
Estates
as a
as a
neighborhood.
data point.
but the land values have always been higher than anywhere else in town, especially East
Then
Whately.
there
And
could be a modifier in the database on those particular parcels.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that an acre of land, a buildable acre of land anywhere in town is going to cost you 150, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's probably what you're going to
So
pay.
here is every parcel in town. Here is the neighborhood codes. This is a filter of database. This is commercial, that's commercial, easy.
Okay,
You
go
got
to-
EW, you got WW,
go to
EC.
East Whately, go to this EW one, pull up the EW.
and then you've got landlocked and this,
Center.
GS, like, Great Swamp, so those are particular parcels. So there is no neighborhood code for Pine Plains.
There's
So
nothing in
they
there.
must be adjusted on an individual basis with a factor.
And can we keep them separate as a different group?
Could there be a new, separate neighborhood? Yes. I think overall, we'll probably want to do a study to see if that's warranted, which
What,
can be done.
what it's doing is increasing everybody in East Whately to the 116 an acre. the
The
land
assessed
value to one,
yeah,
assessed value to
116.
116.
You don't mind me,
6 Francis Way.
6 Francis.
Yes.
FR, you're right. You don't exist, we're sorry.
Named after the developer's mother.
That's right. FRANCES. There you go, you got it.
That's almost out.
There, is that it? I think that's it.
Yeah.
Although
It's
it
funny,
is-
though,
Land-
it's the wrong picture,
That's
That's
not,
not our house.
that's not our house.
That's not your house.
but it is the right cover.
The sketch is right for Pleasant Road.
Okay, this, you're saying the sketch is right?
It looks like it.
The
Yeah.
sketch is
Yeah,
right.
there's only
Yeah,
one.
but the house, that we need a new picture, okay,
The
that's,
photo is across the street.
yes,
Okay, but what,
let him keep going here,
is that the Patriot
All right.
property card?
I believe so.
Okay, so there's neighborhood code, EW, and then neighborhood modifier.
Modification.
So there's a
Pine Plains.
separate modifier on this for PP. That's not the actual,
No, it's Pine Plains.
which is,
Yes, yes,
the modifier on it is 1.0. So
yes,
there's no,
Doesn't-
it's,
it doesn't increase or
it's
decrease,
just a label.
Okay, and now if you pull one up and say Christian Lane,
Good number.
yeah, well, you pull up my 154 Christian Lane.
and your land value is 1159.
Okay, that's, there's no modifier code.
Nope.
Okay,
That
so,
wouldn't be,
but
So the values are based on the same two.
right,
on the same table, but what does the modifier code do in Pine Plains then? It can change the value.
well, there's no modifier,
There is no modifier. It's at 1.0.
yeah, there's none. So your question is, why is your lot valued at 115 and Pine Plains Estates lot valued
Yeah,
at
the
1?
same
That's
thing.
really your question.
Yeah. And last year mine was 95, 99 or whatever. It was less than 100. So mine went up 16,000 and Pine Plains didn't change at all.
Show you.
And I'm not the only one that's increased that much. It's everybody, most everybody in East Whately. Land value is now the
Yep,
116.
Based on the statistics, that's what it pointed to.
But then,
Again, that's a good point. This is not subjective analysis.
No,
This is
based
highly
statistics.
with a lot of data.
Yep.
And you can
Um,
only give us based on what's in the system right now.
Right.
Right.
You can't, that's all you can give us. You can't go above that or beyond that.
Yeah, so last year you had EW the same, WW the same. All you, basically all, well, there was a different curve on BC for some reason, even though the modifier was the same.
You'd have a land sale there for 450,000.
Um,
That could be what skewed it.
what are you showing for one in a village center then?
the village center topped out at 124 and 24.
But that's it.
And the rest of the town is at 99.7.
Yeah.
So now you have 3 distinct curves for 3 distinct neighborhoods in town.
You said 124, right?
Yep.
My CMA came in at 127, so.
So village center on 1 acre, you got 124. On EW at 1 acre, you're at 105. Just under 104. And then at WW, you're at 95.
Could you explain that chart a bit for me?
So that's just the curve.
That's just the curve of
That's
land
how
values.
so we do a curve in order to make sure there's no dips
Yep,
or spikes,
gotcha,
that there's a nice even curve,
gotcha.
as much as you can get one. It's kind of flat line.
No, I understand, yeah.
It's
to me,
only
it's-
1 acre, so there's the different breaks there
Right.
as you see it. And prime sites are valued at the curve because it's not a straight dollar per square foot. And you see that in most developments where you have like a 1 acre lot, half acre lot, third acre lot, third acre. The person that's buying the 1 acre lot isn't gonna pay twice as much
So they have
for
to-
that house
yeah.
because they got a half acre versus the guy that's buying the house on a half.
So they're giving you square footage numbers on that, 42,000 square.
So
acre.
you gotta kind of break, you look at them based on the same
That makes sense.
statistical data.
That makes sense to
Um,
me.
And
I believe there's 42,000 squares in an acre.
46,560.
46,560.
And what would happen if we made a neighborhood factor for Pine Plains?
Well,
well, we could if the statistics say that that's where it should go. And we can't just say, I
Can't
think
arbitrarily-
it's
You're gonna-
more, so we should put it on there.
But
It's gotta be a statistical analysis and proof that it needs to.
but have you done that?
Well, what kind of statistical
no,
analysis? It's
Not yet.
what type of statistical analysis you're talking about?
So we do, a lot of times we'll do what we call a 10-year study and we'll hold 10 years of sales and then time trend them to the current market. And then again, do basically this, stratify them by all the different areas and see what streets in town are pointing to higher values, lower values, and so forth. To define economic.
And is 40 properties in a town of 576 residents enough data to make that?
Well, hopefully when we
Credible.
use 10 years, we
It would make
hopefully
credible.
should have hopefully 100, like at least 100 sales, I would say.
Mhm.
But without looking at them.
No, I understand. That's just,
Well,
We weren't here long
I'm
enough.
from Pine Plains.
Yeah, I know. But
So
East
I'm not
Whately's-
trying to argue my point.
East
Yeah.
Whately's maybe half
I
of
think
that.
we weren't
200,
here
so-
long enough last year in order to do such an in-depth
Understand.
study. We were just trying to catch up in the office.
So you need, basically what you're saying is you need data. You can't just subjectively say, well, they're all newer, they're all nicer, they're all bigger,
Yeah.
therefore we should. You're saying there's a actual procedure. one
Right,
would go
and
through.
it's in, these are all state guidelines, everything
Yes.
has guidelines, so
Okay.
the same thing with an influence factor, so for instance, to a view or somebody abutting power lines
Mhm.
or
Railroad
train
tracks,
tracks.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
we have some of that.
you
Swamp.
can't just say, well, it should, it makes sense to have it. Well, we have to prove, yes, and how much it should be for it
Understood.
through sales.
And this data that you're getting is either MLS data, deed data, but not private sale data. It's not gonna show that.
Right.
It's a private sale. It's not gonna hit, other than the deed. It might show on the deed.
Yeah, I mean, we get the sale price through,
Yeah.
we get all the deeds, obviously.
And I'm not sure how often a deed is
but
updated.
Everything really should be open market,
Yes.
listed properties,
Arm's
so
length.
that there's been competitive bids on the property. I mean, not every property has a competitive bid,
Understood.
but it's had the opportunity to have.
Right.
So,
I don't know if you've got your
So-
question
so
answered, Fred. I'm not
if-
following this.
If we accept these land values here for the three areas they're in for what, fiscal year 25, Gator. Are they gonna change that much for next year then?
Don't
So
know.
it's a seal?
Gonna figure out how many sales you get.
Well, if
You
your
know,
sales are showing increases in value, well, it's sales of the total property, not just the land.
That's right.
That's right.
oh,
That's right.
so,
So you could have a bunch of sales on Christian Lane.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the equitable part of your taxes is whacked because they didn't use an appraisal concept where you reduced land prices. I don't know what that concept was called again.
land residual.
Land residuals. If they didn't apply that land residual concept, then everyone on Christian Lane, I'm just using an example, could be unequitably, so to speak, taxed. So I understand where you're headed on this. It is odd as a realtor for 25 years to see land values decrease. I have seen that more than once in Florida, and that's a different market.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
Very
it
different.
happens.
I haven't seen it here and I've owned property for decades.
But I do believe that nothing goes up or down forever. And,
Yeah,
that's
so
what we live
typical.
with. Yeah, it's all cyclical.
The other thing is, yes, we break out land and break out buildings.
Yes,
The important thing is that we're within the range of total value of the
Yes.
house,
yes,
of the property.
yes.
If you, if someone went to appeal this, and you're saying, if
To
you
an
go to the
abatement,
appellate
yes.
tax board and says, my land value is that house is too much, they're not gonna listen to you, they're gonna look at the total value
Whole
of
thing,
everything else.
right?
And that's what we have to come to, the total value of the property is worth.
Okay, well, I know there's gonna run into this problem next year. There's two on Christian Lane that are in the 250 to 300,000. The assessed value higher than what it's assessed at. I mean, they're assessed in the 300 range and they sold for 600 and 900,000. And they're in the 300 range assessed value.
Yeah.
So every land value is gonna increase that much because of them two sales and
Well, those are when you, if we're not in a certification year, which mandates you have to hit these levels, I mean. The state always looks at all our statistics and looks at it. But in an interim adjustment year, you can kind of ease into it. So I have to look on, I haven't seen these sales, I haven't seen what they are in relation to everything else. Could there be a modifier that has to go on there? Yes, there could be, but without doing the analysis, I can't say for certain one way or the other.
One or two sales isn't gonna whack the system.
And maybe they're outliers.
It is in a small town.
Well, it may, but it's,
It
Yeah.
may.
the law of
and-
large numbers tends to equal out some things.
Yeah, but we don't have large numbers.
what do you get, 18 sales over what, 2-year
So,
period?
you know what? Probably
Yeah.
worth me doing a 10-year analysis and see how things should be.
On all,
Okay.
on everything, yeah.
Guys, I'm gonna need to leave, so is there something you wanna do while I'm still here?
I want to, ask RRG how they handle abatement. We have abatements requests.
Yep.
And I'm assuming you look at that data.
Yep.
You, apply your, again, your, general accepted appraisal guidelines. You go through the property card, you look at their response, and then you come to us with a recommendation.
Yes,
And then from there, we determine if we like that recommendation or not.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm gonna sit with Stephen, so we'll do a preliminary analysis on every property. So what that entails is, we're gonna do a street equity report.
Okay.
So we're gonna look at that property on the street.
Okay.
Ranked with all the other properties, see how they sit with all the other properties.
Okay.
And then we'll do a sales analysis, based on the sales, try to get whatever similar sales there are.
Okay.
And then do a sales analysis on it. And then most likely call for and ask for an inspection to make sure all the data is accurate,
Okay.
because you can't fully take a look at it
Good.
unless the data is.
And RG would go into that
Yes.
house and,
Yep, do a full walkthrough,
okay, great.
measure it, and take outside photos.
And this is something you've been doing for how long, David?
So you're proposing, I think we would say we got 10 abatement
About.
requests. You're gonna go into the, proposing go into the 10 properties.
He may have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
He may have to verify what we have
I
and
mean,
what
it
they have.
depends on what they're,
Yeah, of course.
whatever they make. I mean, if it's something, I tore down my shed, we gotta just go say,
Yeah,
okay,
right.
their shed's gone, take it off.
We haven't all in the past gone in
You haven't?
and inspections unless we sometimes agree or don't agree, and the homeowner said, okay, fine, I'll accept it. So they don't want us
Yeah, and
in,
they
so we
might
don't
not
go
let
in.
us in.
And at that
And at that point,
You have to make
we'll
your
go
best
with the
guess.
data we have,
Right.
and then make the,
I'm
make our
guess-
recommendation to you, and
I'm guessing anyone who wants an abatement would probably want you in.
Would be
It's just
my
my guess. I
mean,
don't
it
know if
is-
that's true, but
it is
I would
technically a requirement to meet the application.
oh, it is a requirement for
If-
to make the
if
abatement.
If it's
So if they don't let you in, no
requested
abatement.
by the board,
Requested,
it is mandatory.
Gotcha. Okay. I
If
didn't know
they,
that.
say no, you can just straight out deny it
Okay,
because they did not comply
understood.
and they cannot appeal.
So they need to let you into appeal.
Yeah.
And it starts the discussion, basically. Okay. And I know
You know,
that,
9 times out of 10, I find just doing the inspection and there's just questions about the property. How did you come up with the assessment? We explain the assessment process and how this came about.
that's really Jane's question.
How would you know if you do come and inspect, we welcome you to do that. How do you know the houses around it that you're referring to? When you're comparing, say, well, this house over here, it's rated at this. You then go inspect that to also see it? Because that's part of what our issue
Yeah,
is. Is that we
unfortunately,
feel
I can't
that
do
they're
that.
not Fairly,
Say it again, I'm sorry, it's not something you generally do.
Yeah,
Okay,
I can't go knocking on everybody
Understood,
else's door.
understood.
and I understand that, that's where the rub comes from.
Right.
Because you know that this one, say, wait a second, this guy's got this, this, and this. Why are we rated here on this one?
So an abatement request is not, it just works with the person who wants the abatement. It does
Right.
not affect those that you're using.
I agree.
Yeah,
But
I wasn't
if-
sure on
if
that.
the argument is that it was rated wrong or graded wrong.
Yeah.
To begin with.
To begin with, then how do you compare it to the thing?
Right.
That's what.
Good question. I don't know. I haven't been through an abatement process on something
Yeah,
new.
so I mean,
We don't-
all we can do is validate what's there for your particular property. And then
Go from
compare
there.
it to the data we have.
Gotcha.
You know, obviously be as fair as control. Everything can be, but
Now, this
you
board
know,
could
if your
determine,
neighbor's got finished basement, you haven't been in the house, we have no idea they have finished basement.
Exactly.
how are we supposed to know?
You know, if they have a pool and a bunch of stuff outside that I can verify that we didn't have, then that's a different story. I
Okay.
mean, was the pool and the
Yeah.
shed and things like that.
We can't just take someone's word for their neighbor's not. You know, you can tell, you may very well know exactly what's in that house, but if it's not in our yard, you can't see it.
It's not on
Was
the
it
card.
sold recently and I can verify it.
Through Whately.
So
Yeah.
when a house sells recently, is it re-inspected?
It's looked at.
It's, yeah, I
We
mean,
look
yes,
at-
we send out a mailing to every property that sells to verify information. We go into MLS and look at it. There's still questions from something we didn't see. We'll go out, you know, knock on the door and say, hey.
So
we're
Fred,
here to take a
We,
look.
we
at
do
your
that, the
pictures."
board does that, yeah, we
is
compare
that
and
what you
see.
did like a year ago,
Yeah.
before you folks came on, would you go out and re-inspect? on every-
Yes, yeah,
every
we
single-
do, especially if there was big differences, we'd look in to see, to make sure our data was agreeable with the value that it sold for.
Yeah.
Many times we would adjust to come closer, we didn't actually match the sale value, but we adjusted our conditions and grade and quality of it as well.
Yeah.
So,
I have to say that looking at your presentation, I'm very impressed. Okay? I'm an old
Detailed.
statistician myself.
All right, so you understand the stats.
School of
Detail.
numbers are everything.
Yeah.
And I see how you're coming up with it. It makes sense to me. It's not, well, maybe there's a little subjectivity and grading, but,
Yeah.
you know, I can see why you put adjustments in there and so on. I like, it gives me a little more confidence in what the system.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
I feel like you will be able to explain to me where my bottom line came from. And that's all I
That's all
wanted
she's
to
ever
know
wanted.
for the last 4 years, and nobody's been
It's been,
forthcoming.
Okay.
well, it's
So,
understood. And if I mean, there's so many different definitions of value.
Oh, absolutely.
Be it market
I mean,
value, trade
replacement
value,
cost,
use
new-
value,
yeah.
liquidation value. We're only concerned, this board is only concerned with assessed value, that's it.
Right.
And how sales affect that. But we don't value money. We just verify, if I could.
Yes.
What's there and what's on the tax. That's all we do. We verify, then it gets thrown to you. You run a very elaborate chart, come up with a number. And again, I want to say, what, 576 homes? In residential homes, not including, and I don't know how much commercial, but I know it's what Jenny's got. To me, that's enough credible data to support what you're doing. If we had 10 homes in town, there's not enough credibility to help at all.
So to your point, like if there are only 3 sales,
You know,
fortunately, there are several surrounding towns. We can look at what's the market doing around you?
Right,
And
We've done that.
kind of gives me guidelines of, okay, where can I adjust? How much can I adjust? I always, like I said, I always try to be diligent in looking at future stuff, because I don't wanna target a high assessment to sale ratio and then see the markets coming down next year, because then you have a lot of bouncing up and down in your valuations. So I try to be very moderate with adjustments and put a lot of thought into it.
tax
before-
valuations jumping up and down would be friendly. When I did my CMA on land, I took Deerfield, Sunderland, and Whately. I even took Greenfield because I didn't have enough data. Again, mine is a CMA, not a.
Yeah, and you know, I came from realtor
You did.
appraisal background
Okay.
20 some odd years ago. Believe it or not, I've been doing assessing for 20 years. So I get it. I mean, you can't always find comps, and the hardest part of being appraiser or realtor is you're supposed to only use like
3 months.
3 to 6 months,
So it's a passe.
you know,
So what
and
do you
they'll
do?
approve up to a year.
Perhaps.
But
Mortgage wise.
you know, fortunately in assessing, we're using a closed full county, so that you have typically a bigger bucket of sales, and it's statistics versus actual individual adjustments. on
Yes.
every
To the
single
town's
parcel.
benefit.
Yeah.
If you had to use just the last 3 months,
We'd have nothing.
or we would have some very big increases.
Right, yeah, you know,
So it's good that the assessed value is lagging the actual market value. It's designed that way.
If we ask you to do this analysis for you're saying of looking at Pine Plains States versus East Whately. And that's gonna, well, you don't know what it's gonna show, but would that be a basis to adjust values for next year going forward? Would you use that to adjust
yeah,
land sales?
There are like sales, I mean, we'd have to look at them for making adjustments, would they be as extreme, so if it's 300,000 above what we have now, that would be a pretty huge adjustment, and to do that town-wide would be catastrophic, so you'd have to try to figure out what the balance is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because land sales started like at 95,000 7-8 years ago when it first started. And the latest they were up to 125.
You're again on
So-
assessed value,
No,
not market value.
no,
Actual
not
market
assessed
value.
value. That was land sales value. Sales was up to 125
Yeah.
lately. So
Right. Does anything enter into the fact that they were the last 2 lots in the development? And they sold for
So that
more
would
than,
come into the depreciation of the house itself.
Right.
yeah,
So they've been worth, so typically you would expect their building values to be higher than the rest because they haven't depreciated.
Not much newer. I had one last question. You had mentioned that because, well, we would, at least from this seat, I would love it to see if we can get as many properties as we can to discover any inaccuracies. That's a lot of work. Is
It
that,
is,
is that something you're still proposing for us?
yeah, I mean, there's lots of stuff that can do,
Mhm.
it all just comes down to time.
Okay.
we need to decide that as a board what we want to look at.
Okay.
Comparisons and all that. We haven't done
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
I think your certification in 27.
We did it 2 years ago. So what's 2 years?
Oh, okay, so it was
20,
22? 22, we did it maybe 22. So yeah, you're 27.
Yeah, 27.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So anything that we want to do with the data cleanup, there's gonna have to happen soon. I mean, I think we had a backlog of permits, which I think we caught up on. So first and foremost, you know, we want to get through abatements.
Yeah.
And then start attacking any permits again. If there's any new construction that get completed, that's a whole nother topic. That's the
Okay,
supplemental data.
Sure.
So get back to what I was
and
asking
lot splits and things like that. And
about
then start
doing the 10-year assessment of land values. Do we need to remind you that we want that done again, or you got it on the
No,
radar?
yeah, no, it's on my radar. It's just,
I mean, not next week, but
yeah, it's an intensive analysis.
this
so
year
it's-
sometime.
But, yeah, it was something that, probably get done prior to, value process.
Okay.
So, come,
Okay.
come early, fallish, September-ish, we'll have it ready.
Let me ask you, while you're still here, and on our website, we've got sales for fiscal year 2025. I don't, why do we have that on there? Yeah, sales.
We got all the
That
sales.
should be
That should be on there.
fiscal 25 sales, which should be the 22-23 sales.
Right, but to me, it's confusing. Why do we even have that on our webpage?
I'd like to be very forthcoming with the public and let them know this is the data that set your values. And if anybody has an abatement or is curious about how their values would derive, they can look at the sales
Good, but
and say, okay, well, this is what these properties sold for.
It's public information.
Yeah,
well, we never had that on there before, and it's not sales for fiscal year. It's not fiscal year 25 sales. It was 20 well, prior year sales that affected the values for fiscal year 25.
right.
That's what
Okay,
you
there's
think.
no explanation on there saying that. I think it's confusing.
We can add language to make it a
We need
little bit
to
more.
say
clear.
something on there. What is
What's the
the
time period?
purpose of this?
Yeah, time
And
period.
also, what was the source of this data? Where did this come from?
Well, it came from MLS.
MLS?
No, that's straight from our database.
For the sales,
Those
Database?
should be the same sales you just saw in
Right.
the spreadsheet.
which
The
is,
sales that had the pictures of the properties and all
Yeah,
that?
we added the photos
You
to
added?
make it, well.
I'm confused. I thought it was MLS data.
What's
I
that?
thought it was MLS data.
No, well, the photos might be clipped from MLS,
Uh-huh.
just to make it, I think pictures speak more
I
than
understand.
just words and numbers.
Then I guess I'd ask Stephen to put an explanation, either a top line or something. What's
Sure.
the purpose of this? Because it is confusing. That people looking at this and we've never done it before. I don't know.
Yeah, so we try to be, as public facing as possible and give as much and as more data than we've ever had probably in the past. I just think it's, helps people in looking at and trying to analyze their own property, answers questions.
Yeah,
We also, I don't know, Stephen, did you already do the assessor brochure? Put that on there? Almost, I'm waiting on. So we also, you'll see coming, we do this assessors brochure, so it breaks down
What we do.
what assessors do.
Yeah.
It breaks down the whole town budget.
Mhm.
You'll see an average single family value,
Mhm.
average single family tax bill,
Mhm.
and how your dollars go to your tax bill, what
Mhm.
percentages based on town spending.
Mhm.
So that's forthcoming. These are just kind of standard type things we like to do in all the towns, just to be as public facing as possible.
Transparent.
I know you've
Yeah.
never done it before, but that transparency is huge to me.
Yeah.
Property owner.
okay.
And then, the GIS is updated, all the property cards are up to date there as of January 1st, the values.
We'd like to see them sooner, yes, but
Well, the values were on there, the cards, we had some problem, we had to buy some software to get them printed and attached to the actual parcels.
Oh.
So I had to get that approved, in order to do it. But the values were already kind of there with their, CAI has their CAI property card, which does just a quick brief summary of your assessed value.
Mhm.
And then on the side menu in GIS, if you scroll down,
Yes.
that's always current information.
Yes.
And then.
I've seen
yeah.
that. Mhm. Okay.
okay, just quickly go over some items here. Okay, we had explanation of land and building values. What do we want to do here? Are we accepting what we heard, or we want to discuss it, debate it?
I accept what I
What are
heard.
what are we gonna
I would
do?
like to make a motion to say I accept what I heard. Jenny's not here, so that's unfortunate.
Okay,
I like what I heard. The explanation made sense. It was backed by data. It was backed by generally accepted appraising concepts. It's as equitable as we can get based on the information they have. And if we're going to do anything other than have them go into more houses to make it more equitable, I guess that would work for me too. I'm very pleased with what I just heard.
okay, I guess I can accept that too with the comment I keep referring to is doing the 10-year sales,
Yes,
10-year land sales.
thank you, guys.
I'll accept that or
Okay.
support, which saying as long as we get the 10-year land sales done this year somehow.
Right.
Okay, we talked about abatement, exemptions quickly. Well, Stephen gave us some information on run through this of abatements. Alright. Okay, these were the property abatements for the handicapped, right? And veterans. Okay,
That's the exemptions, yes.
the exemptions. You have to, okay,
Just to-
sign that.
Does David need to be here for that?
Well,
No,
we're actually looking at your items, so you want to make sure we get that.
Oh, personal property?
Yeah,
Yeah, you wanna get to that subject?
so I can give you some, send you some handouts, that define what's taxable for the state, based on however a business is classified,
Yes,
whether it's a sole proprietorship, a
LLC,
LLC, or all those
yeah.
things.
yeah,
I have a very good, I didn't know this was on the agenda, otherwise I would have printed it. But we have a very good grid that breaks it down of
Yes.
what's taxable, what's not. what's
Yes.
constitutes
That'd be
those
great.
things.
that'd be great.
Unfortunately, the personal property laws within the state are very weak. Meaning, almost everything for large corporations, LLCs, is exempt. And there's no teeth to the personal property laws.
That's
So-
interesting.
So if someone decides, I'm not paying my personal property, your only recourse is to go to small claims court.
Oh, wow.
There's no repercussions whatsoever. Now the town can go in to say, if they pull a permit, they can't get a permit until they pay the bill, but that's all like town code type of thing. But yeah, it's a pain in the butt to
Sounds it.
administer and
Sounds
to
it.
collect personal property.
We have a bunch of,
Especially if you have a lot of sole proprietorships of businesses that are people just operating out of their garage that you
Mhm.
don't know about, there's no street sign,
mhm,
and you just get, they don't, a lot of times they only pull a business certificate.
Right.
So it's tough to find those, I mean, the clerks also have to go after to say, hey, you need to file a DBA.
Yeah.
And then typically we hound the clerks for all the DBAs, so that then we can send out the forms with us and inspect.
that's so it's just, I find that remarkable that basically the laws exist, but they're unenforceable, but more or less.
It's horrible. I mean, the
It's-
state's.
it's legal, but
looking
unenforceable.
for- In my opinion, I think the state would be best served by revisiting personal property
Sounds
laws.
Hmm.
Strengthening.
That's something we have to take up later, I guess.
yes, Stephen printed out something from GLS, I guess, for us, that's still current, right?
Yes, for 2019.
Applies March 2019, okay, so that's still almost current, okay,
Wow,
I can give you.
That-
make a
that's-
copy
that's
of that
eye-opening.
if you want.
that's eye-opening.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's,
That leaves us helpless with regards to personal property. Should anyone say, I'm just not gonna pay the tax?
yeah,
Wow,
okay,
good to know.
okay. Personal property, okay, abatements, you're still working on the farm vehicle? excise tax.
That's
Yeah,
Yes,
so
we
is
have-
that, I had a question. Is that something you always have typically done as the farm vehicle?
Yes.
Okay.
We have,
And do you do also the animal?
not
No,
anymore.
this year we eliminated the animal.
We got tired of counting cows.
The other one that is absolutely horrible. Boat excise.
I'm sorry, the boat?
Boats,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
What we've done on well, personal property one, we set a limit of 5,000. If
Okay.
less than 5,000, we're not
Don't even
taxing.
bother.
Gotta find out what meeting that happened. That was several years ago.
Yeah, that the state should have that.
Yeah.
If I log into Gateway, it should be.
It should
Should
tell you
be.
that,
Yeah.
the exemption, yeah, for the 5,000, okay. Minutes of last meeting,
Last question, I'm sorry, I know you're trying to get out of here. If I wanted to become more knowledgeable on grading, how to grade, because I'm gonna be going into these properties and, without that knowledge, I
Yep.
feel wrong in even saying A, B, or C. There must be, I mean, you had mentioned there must be a class, or there must be some information online that I can educate myself on.
So I can send you the written descriptions we have.
I do have the
And then
descriptions of the houses.
I have like a PowerPoint. It's actually, I have a PDF.
Yes,
The visual pictures of different grades.
Mhm.
So when you get into the in-between grades, which I hate, so
understood.
depending on the system you have, like there's some towns you go into and I've seen as many as 24 grades,
Oh, wow.
which I think is ridiculous. I
Sure.
think you should have average, good, very good, excellent, and then possibly in betweens of those, I mean.
Minus or pluses, sure.
You know, but we had a town, one that we just got finished cleaning up. There was average,
Hmm.
average minus and plus 5, average minus and plus 10.
No
average
way.
Minus plus 15, all the way up to 25 before you got to,
The next level?
I'm like, how are you that good that you know? And
Yeah.
so what that told me was that assessor had no idea how to change their tables. And they were chasing sales by adding more grades and adjusting
Oh, sure.
grading.
Mhm.
we can work on that.
But
Yeah.
you can send me something.
Yes.
You can send it to Stephen.
Yeah.
And you can just send, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great. I didn't want to spend any more of his time. I'm very pleased with what I've seen.
Yeah, and if you ever seen Marshall and Swift Guide, I don't think. But it's very much based on that too. So the same kind of costing manual that a contractor, insurance agent would use,
Sure. They do this.
they have the gradation descriptions.
They do.
photos,
Well, that makes sense,
So
doesn't it?
kind of pulled from that and private appraisal practice and
Mhm.
what we're told from HUD and Fannie Mae,
Mhm.
everything else.
Sure.
And how-
Anything that stops me from being subjective is what I want. So I know it's subjective to
There's
some degree.
always- Yeah.
There's always some degree.
Subjectivity.
I would agree with that, but the less
but-
subjective this
Yeah.
board is, the more credible we'll become. That's my opinion.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We approved the minutes, do we act on the minutes?
Oh, we did act on the
Yeah,
minutes.
okay.
Yeah, let these guys go.
What's that? All right. No problem. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Good to see you.
Thanks for coming.
I'm sorry again.
Well, it's all, have a safe trip back.
Good to meet you.
Oh, donuts. That's a
Okay.
mistake.
I'd rather,
That could be dangerous.
all right.
Take care, guys. What did you want to ask? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Minutes?
No, we did the minute.
We did the minutes. yeah.
Okay, schedule, okay, here, now, Stephen, you're,
Yes.
just talk briefly, you're on a Thursday, 8-hour day,
Yes.
starting this week, right?
I started it last week. But I
Last
will
week,
be, and again for the 8 hours this week.
okay, for 8 hours, okay, what do we want to do for next meeting?
In terms of an agenda?
Well, the agenda and a time, what day do we pick?
Well, date, I'm free. Agenda, we probably should readdress this whole meeting. Make sure that Jenny's on the same page.
Yeah.
At least discuss with her what we've decided. I hope you're not upset with me, but I was very impressed with what I saw in terms of their ability to help us be equitable and fair. I know you've done it differently, and I want to certainly respect that.
The only thing, like I keep saying, is the land sales.
Land
That
sales. Okay,
bothers
so
me
he'll
the
do
most, I
Mhm.
guess.
Mm. But he will do he will go back and do a study that should answer your question.
Yeah.
And I knew we were gonna get good answers. It's just it was better that he stayed in front of us and showed us, because I couldn't read that chart same place.
Yeah. But he went into more detail than he did before.
He did. And I will tell you, he did try to explain why land values went down the first time around, but it was so quick and it was so generic that I didn't catch it.
And he wasn't here, he was,
He was on Zoom.
oh,
Yeah, so.
okay. Yeah, I guess it kind of puzzles me why we haven't adjusted up until now this way. I mean, we had Mayflower do it before,
Mhm.
came in and assumed they knew what they were doing, and they coordinated with DOR, and it was something acceptable.
Mhm.
Why wasn't these values adjusted before?
You know, that's a
Why
good
didn't we
question, Fred.
Look at it this way before.
Well, it's a good question, but if he didn't, a lot of people would have gotten whacked
Yeah,
on their taxes. But
Uh-huh.
and plus, were there, I mean, the economic growth of sales has kind of continued in an upward trend as inventory goes down. Was that the scenario when you were doing it
yeah,
X amount of years back?
Yeah.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good, I don't have an answer for you. He had a good answer, but I don't have an answer for it.
But I noticed some concerns with land values, especially
Yes.
this last year or two. I mean, similar properties on River Road, I'll give you an example. Look at 3 or 4 in a row and land value is different. On River Road, they're right next to each other. There's nothing different.
There should be
So
pretty close
they
to the
weren't.
same, yeah.
They were, well, anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 difference, right next to
Well,
each other.
that's not a big
Why didn't we have the
difference.
same land values on River Road? You would think they'd be the same, right?
You know, I don't disagree with you. Again, my realtor background says, okay, let's look at all 5. Maybe one has an acre, but only half an acre is buildable,
Well,
or,
yeah.
you know, so there might be some
Right,
differences there.
but the starting point was the same value, was the same for each one, so, I mean, it was different, it
Mhm.
varied for each one,
I
so.
don't have a good answer for you on that one.
So in a way, I guess we're looking at consistent land values.
We're looking for consistency.
Yeah.
And I do believe, I've always believed this, but again, I don't know how you did it. So you have,
Yeah.
I've always believed that RRG was going to give us that consistency. I'm sorry that they spent so much time getting back to us.
Yeah,
But I like what I see. I'm sorry, I like what I see.
Okay.
From a 25-year realtor approach, from someone who's constantly done nothing but value properties based on statistics,
Yeah.
not based on subjectivity. I like what I.
I just kind of accept it. The real test is gonna come explaining these abatements to people.
Well, that's
and
true.
How they come up with these values and whether people accept it or not.
Well, I think the abatement, are we off camera?
No, we're still on, right?
Okay. Yes, I think it's gonna be interesting.
Because some of these kind of follow their thinking or logic here of statistics showing the values
Yeah.
increased or why they increased where
Well, the question I have is, based on the abatements we have,
Yeah.
you probably could come up with an answer. You've been doing it for all these
Right.
years. I can't. I'm not sure Jenny could.
Yeah.
And I know you have, because you've done them before, right? And
Right.
you've explained to taxpayers with Cynthia, this is why we came up with what we came up with. We don't have to agree with RRG, but I'm positive they're going to give us very specific guidelines as to why they think this should be done. And we'll have to determine if it works or not.
Hoping that that's what they'll give us, yeah.
I'm positive. I'd be stunned if they didn't.
Okay, and so the next question would be, do we do that with them in open session or do we do executive session? Do we want to talk about?
We let them
Individual
give us
properties.
their recommendations and then we go to executive session. in my
Well,
opinion.
it's gotta be, the recommendation's gotta be specific to properties, so.
You can't have four people in the room, right? Four taxpayers in the same room during a regular meeting.
Yeah, I guess you can.
And talk about it, or does that have to
Well-
be executive session? Okay, let me rephrase. If we have an executive session, does it have to be each taxpayer at a time separately, or all of them come in and we talk about it all at once? I don't know the answer.
I don't know either, because we haven't had this before. I don't know whether Stephen knows or could find out. Well, I could ask Peter, I guess, how.
Peter
how we
would
do
know.
that.
Certainly, let's let our RG, we're paying them.
Yeah,
We're paying them a lot of money. Let's let them certainly go through the abatement process.
Yeah.
And again, you heard David, he's been there for 20 years. He knows what he's doing. I'm sorry, both Davids.
both Davids.
Yeah, they've been, it's not like they just decided I'm gonna get into this business today. So I'm positive they've been through this process often. Well, hell, Greenfield's got RG, don't they? Doesn't Greenfield? I know Greenfield runs a really tight ship, from what I'm told. They don't let anything get by. At least that's what I've been told, so.
See here what happens. Whether we agree. That would be a test, I guess.
Be positive, my man.
Okay,
It's actually gonna turn out better than you think. It's just my opinion.
and one of the ones is, well, was here today. Did she agree with the values?
No, she's
She's still,
well, they were both impressed
Yeah.
by what they saw, because when they first came to the board and says, how did we come to our numbers? And we're like, we didn't have an answer for them. Other than sales, that's all we can say, past sales. Our RG is gonna have an answer for it. They might not like it, but they're gonna have an answer.
let's adjourn the meeting, we can tell.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
motion to adjourn the meeting,
seconded.
all in favor,
Aye,
aye.
aye.
Okay.